I call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, October 22nd, 2018, and the time is 7 p.m. Dr. Hillman, there were a number of items in the table file.
Yes, you just saw a couple of personnel items, an appointment, and a additional assignment. We also included a resolution awarding the sale, determining the form and details, authorizing the execution, delivery, and registration, and providing payment of general obligation school building refunding bonds, Series 2018A. Jeff Seeley from Ellers Incorporated is here to follow up on what he had shared last time, and the information was in the table file for you this evening. And then finally, we're also thrilled to have Director of Finance Val Mergersdorf review the district's bond rating, which I think you'll be pleased with. So those are the items for the table file.
Excellent. Thank you very much. If there's no objection, we'll add these items to the agenda as we move forward. We now have an opportunity for public comment. This is a chance for anyone residing in the Northfield Public School District to address the board. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board? Okay. Seeing no one come forward, we'll move on to announcements and recognitions. Dr. Hillman.
Yes, I have several this evening. First of all, we want to congratulate Northfield High School science instructor Rebecca Messer. She received recognition from the College Board's Advanced Placement Program and Educational Testing Service for significant contributions during the 2018 AP reading. In June 2018, 310 AP physics teachers joined forces with college faculty who teach in the same discipline to score, get this, 278,867 exams.
Wow.
The careful evaluation of students' work by Mrs. Messer and other highly qualified professionals is one of the most important aspects of the AP program, and a huge part of the AP program success is due to an evaluation and scoring process that reflects the high standards of AP readers who, by virtue of their experience and expertise, have appropriate student performance expectations with their respective disciplines. So we want to congratulate Mrs. Messer on her work, and of course, as a school, we always get a positive reinforcement with when our people go and read AP exams, because it gives them greater context in which to teach the content to prepare students for that. So we want to thank Rebecca for taking her time to do that. In addition, Director of Special Services Cheryl Hall wanted to share with you that we have a few staff members this year participating in teacher preparation programs through something called the New Year, New You collaboration. And the collaborative is a group of special education directors and representatives from the regional colleges and universities that form to build capacity around teacher recruitment, professional development, and the retention of qualified teachers, and also to develop a common voice for Southeast Minnesota around educational topics and actions that have lasting impact. And this is something that we're using to address the special education teacher shortage in our region. So thank you to Cheryl and for the regional special education directors for taking action and steps to try to decrease the teacher shortage in this very important area. Many people in the room remember Dr. Gary Lewis, our retired Director of Student Services, and he is the current CEO of SpedForms Incorporated. I'm really proud to announce that he's been awarded the Legacy Award by the Minnesota Administrators for Special Education. Dr. Lewis will be honored for his commitment to encouraging, developing, and mentoring leaders who reflect the MACE mission at a statewide recognition ceremony to be held at the 2018 MACE Fall Leadership Conference. It's actually this Thursday. Dr. Lewis served as special education administrator for a total of 24 years. As you know, he was at the Riverbend Education District until 2003, and then came here to Northfield, where he was the Director of Student Services from 2003 to 2013. He then retired and became the CEO of SpedForms. And as you all know, Dr. Lewis has been a mentor to many people, including me, throughout his career. I was actually in one of the I started teaching in one of the members of the Riverbend Education District. So I was 26 years old when I first met Gary Lewis, and he really took an active interest in developing leaders, and I'm a person who can really look to him and thank him for mentoring me early in my career. He understands that high-quality teachers are the most critical component of public education, and he's not afraid to make challenging decisions in staffing models, always looking to place teachers in a position where they and their students can be most successful. If you remember, Dr. Chris Richardson won the Polaris Award several years ago for MASA. This is the MACE version of this, and it is the highest honor that a special education administrator can receive from his or her peers. So a hearty congratulations to Dr. Lewis, and we are proud that he represented us for a decade. And then finally, this evening at the table, you have a copy of this, the Greenvale Park Community School Report to the community was completed this month. The report details the results of the 4th year of community school programming in Greenvale Park. The report is in the process of being shared with Greenvale Park families. All families with preschool children living in the Greenvale Park attendance boundary community partners, and also local real estate agents. And many thanks to everyone who assisted with the report's compilation, as well as Gwen Daniels with Northfield Healthy Community Initiative for her wonderful design work. It's a beautiful document and really tells a great story about Greenvale Park Community School. Those are your announcements for this evening.
Excellent, thank you. Is there anything any board members would like to add? Okay, well, thank you. So we'll move on to items for discussion and report. Tonight, our first report is an update on the high school flex hour. Here to do that report is high school principal Joe Lear. And just a reminder, I did just hand board members an updated version of the PowerPoint.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for having me back to give you a mid-fall update on how the flex period has gone to this point. It was interesting over the last 8 hours. I've been talking with some students to get their initial comments, to get some quotable quotes. I had no idea that we would have this many along that I could just turn and have them speak to you firsthand. So feel free when you open up the segment for questions to direct them right at Jackson. I'm just kidding. But anyway, thank you for giving us a chance to be back here after our conversations during the pilot week and to share a little bit about what's been happening. One of the things I wanted to make sure we were very intentional about in terms of the slide presentation tonight was to remind you of the goals and objectives. One of the things we talked about last spring and has really continued to be at the forefront of why we are doing the flex period are the goals and objectives you see before you. Again, fostering relationships, building a better balance in student day, providing opportunities for career and college readiness, which my colleague Mark Ensry will speak to shortly after me, and then providing equity in access to academic supports for students. Tongue-in-cheek, really we set a course for making the flex period all things to all people. And I really think that we're on the way to accomplishing that, mainly because we're putting those decisions in terms of what it needs to be in the hands of those people that really should be making those decisions, and namely the students and the staff that are supporting them. So just a reminder again, there are about 30 schools across the state that are dabbling with or have dived headlong into a model that resembles ours. Centennial High School was the one that we modeled ourselves most closely after, but a number of schools have tried a various range of flex periods in their school day, depending on their school model. And these are the things, as you remember, that we responded to: student stress, behavior issues, school climate, and equity of opportunity, that really became kind of the motivation for us to say that we really did need to make a change. And if you remember, change, as hard as it can be for people who have changed recently, this was 41 years since the last time we made an adjustment to the daily schedule here at the high school. So you could argue we were due, but you could also argue that we had settled into a fairly significant routine. So moving out of that certainly could have had its challenges, but I think that things have gone very positively at this point. So again, just a reminder, this is what the schedule looks like. Flex period occurs at the same time every day, 11:11 to 12:11, with the exception of Wednesday. With the late start, we have a 50-minute flex period, but everything else remains intact on those 4 days a week. Also, as a reminder, as Mark will share with you, the college and career readiness curriculum is delivered on Tuesdays. We initially went into the first Tuesday just hoping we wouldn't have created some sort of mess by having them all do it, because all of the teachers are either eating lunch or working with a group of kids. So there's no one supervising the general structure of the building. So we have educational assistants supporting in that way, but it worked out very well. In fact, better than I would ever have guessed in the model that we have. So 2 grades do CCR first half of flex, 2 grades do CCR the second half of flex. And that's all I'm going to say, so I don't tread on your information. Again, 60 minutes each day. And right now we have a current structure of 10 minutes move, 20 minutes stay put. 10 minutes move, 20 minutes stay put. I will talk a little bit about some not ongoing challenges, but challenges that we will face and address. And one of them is this structure. We've had some conversations at the staff level to say, is it in the best interest of students? And the key challenge, and I would probably get a lot of nods from the students in the galley, is that first 10 minutes is when the lion's share of our students are trying to get lunch. And so 10 minutes is the food service people are amazing about getting people through the lines. I I don't think anyone can get that many kids through a line in 10 minutes. So we end up with some students who spend the first half of the flex period in the cafeteria where maybe they'd rather be getting some academic support while they eat. So we've been examining ways to kind of restructure, play with that a little bit. We're going to gather some feedback from students just to see what they really would like. It's possible that they're perfectly fine in the cafeteria, but we're going to gather some feedback and find out what is in the best interest in terms of movement. And as you know, activities that are available, or excuse me, what's available during the flex period, different physical activities, academic supports. One of the things that maybe is a little bit lost on the students, but certainly lost on the community, and so we're working to kind of change that in terms of information we get out, that students have access to academic support in the 4 content areas of social studies, science, English, and math every moment of flex period all week long. So it may not be the teacher you have, Jeff, for example, that your math teacher may not be available right at the moment you need it, but there's a math teacher available in academic support at every moment of every flex period, with the exception of our college and career readiness day. And that was very intentional because we wanted to make sure that students had access to those academic supports when they needed them, not when we could find time to offer them. Social emotional support, we have dogs. Today's dog was barking loudly in the lower cafeteria. And I keep looking for a term that fits my age. Chill time is not it. But we really have been unapologetic about our interest in allowing students to have some time to kick back and relax if that's what they need. And I would say a good chunk of students do that at least once, if not multiple days a week. And this piece has been the hardest, not the hardest, the easiest for me to grapple with, because it makes sense that we structure the elementary school day. We have countries across the globe that have built-in times where students can get away from their academics and have breaks built in. But we have just moved students through class after class after class. College programs don't do that to kids. And so it made sense for us to examine that. And so we are unabashed about our declaration that there are students that are playing bingo, sitting around talking, having a longer conversation at the lunch table. Had a college application essay, one of Mark's counseling students that wrote about the in-depth conversations at the lunch table that this particular student had grown so much to appreciate because they've got some time to develop those topics rather than stuff the food in and be off to their next class. So that's been cool. We had Mental Health Awareness Week the week before our MEA break, and so we had presenters come into the auditorium and share their expertises for Mental Health Awareness Week. But we also have those opportunities, not presentations, but mental health opportunities available throughout the course of the year across our building. And then CCR, as I mentioned, on Tuesdays, which Mark will be sharing. So what are we hearing? One of the pieces that we have done, Bubba Sullivan, who actually, his supervisory assignment is to develop the schedule, if you will, the flex schedule, supervision activities, so that every place is covered and all the teachers have assignments that are clear, and so students have access to that as well. But they also have access to a Google form where at any given moment they can provide positive and challenging feedback. So what's going well? The staff has been over the top about their appreciation for a student responsibility in terms of cleaning up after themselves. Obviously, one of the biggest things was we were moving food into 300,000 square feet of building almost, and that's been beyond our wildest dreams. The cleanliness has kept up with our hopes, and I think students have just acknowledged the fact that they want this opportunity. And they don't want to do things to jeopardize those freedoms to be able to move throughout the building with their lunches. Mature choices are being made, and like I said, no mess. But anyway, back to the Google form. The Google form is a living, breathing document that I have open on my desktop every day. And so multiple times a day I'm checking that to see what the staff are sharing, because at any given moment they will share a challenge. It might be extraneous movement in a particular part of the building. It may be something we haven't thought about. It may be a structure that needs some reconsideration, and so that we can respond to those staff challenges and concerns in real time, either fixing them or certainly responding to them so that staff know that we're at least examining through the lens of how can we problem solve. And so, like I said, I check that multiple times a day so that so that we're making those best decisions. And then also, one of the things we'll do with students is do a formal feedback gathering process at the end of each quarter. So here at the end of the first quarter, we'll do a formal feedback gathering through a survey to let students let us know what's going well, and also what are the challenges they're encountering, but also what are ways that we can help make the flex period a better period for them. And again, what we're hearing from students, these are the pieces, and obviously I'm going to highlight in bright white print the things that they're saying that are positive, but students are wholeheartedly talking about how much more ready they are for classes in the afternoon, that they've got this time to kind of decompress, and then they hit periods 5, 6, and 7 really hard. And so that's been encouraging, that they're less stressed, they have more time after school, and they just love the chance to breathe. We have bingo on one day a week in Miss Saxon West Room, and there are 45 to 60 kids playing bingo. And it is a mix of kids all, across the spectrum, but students who have all sorts of AP homework to do, or all sorts of work to do, or they're in co-curriculars. And so they're busy people, but they need that de-stressor. And that's the choice they're making. And like I said, we applaud that. We will help encourage students who we believe need some academic supports if they're not pursuing them on their own. But to this point, we really felt like leaving those types of decisions up to the students is putting the decision in the hands of the people that know best for that. All right, in the next month, these were spaces we were hoping to have in place already. But first week of November, if you're familiar with the hallway where the business department rests at the end of the S-wing, at the end of the S-wing, lockers were cleared out over the summer. We'll be installing essentially counters at which students can sit at high stools, soft stools that will have counters, charging stations. So basically like a cafeteria, not a cafeteria. What am I trying to say?
Coffee shop.
Coffee shop, thank you. Where you sit up at the counter, do some homework, socialize. The hallway will become a place to gather rather than a place to pass through. 2 other spots, Mr. Whitney in our social studies department is turning his room into basically a flex station. So desks will move out. Flexible furniture that can be used as in an instructional model as well as in a more relaxed lounge type setting will be in there, so that space will be available every flex period. And then down in the M-wing vestibule, similar furniture will be installed. Really trying to make the best of the limited spaces that we have for kids to gather, and then giving some things that will make them comfortable in those gathering spaces as well. Just today, we had our first day of the mobile lunch cart, if you're familiar with the breakfast cart that sits outside the H-wing entrance, the district office entrance. Now we serve lunch from there, kind of a grab and go lunch. One of the things that students have talked about is getting out into the building after they get their lunch. So we move the lunch out in the building so they can grab it there, and they're already in the places that they want to get to once they have their food. And then also monitoring and adjusting the interest offering. This is something we kind of joked about at our staff meeting, that the teachers, the activity teachers offer once a week, we call interests. Well, by definition then, it should be interesting. And so if the students are, Matt, I think this is your word, voting with your feet. If they're voting with their feet and they're saying, well, it's not interesting to us, then let's switch that up and come up with something that students are drawn to. But there are a number of activities students are drawn to in large numbers. I mean, we have places where, by the way, the high school musical sing-along was particularly popular last week. But a number of places that are drawing 50, 60, 70 kids at a time. So we're encouraged by that, but we're also going to be adjusting that and looking for feedback from students in those formal opportunities to say, what is it you would like to have access to in those times. Social emotional inventory is something that we already did, but we'll be doing again in January. It's a series of questions gauging students' social emotional health. In addition to that then is some baseline data that we'll gather here in November about how things are going during the flex period from students and staff, and getting that feedback and then making adjustments each quarter based on that. I'm going to say thank you, and then I'm going to have Mark pop up and he will cover the CCR material, and then I'll be back up for questions.
Excellent, thank you. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks. I think it was Michael O'Keefe and I that were here about a year ago talking about how things were going with the Career and College Readiness Action Team through Northfield Promise. Michael and I are co-chairs of that group, and at that time we knew Career and College Readiness was coming to Northfield High School, and we were still trying to work on what that was going to look like. It came together nicely with the work of the Flex Hour, and that's where we now reside with what we call our Career and College Readiness cohorts for half of the flex period every Tuesday. And I'm also knowing and owning full well that we are 5 25-minute sessions into this, and there are students around me who are just beginning to sample what CCR cohorts are all about. We have 9th graders in the building who did career and college readiness through their health class all through last year. So we have a lot of different viewpoints on kind of what's just getting started as far as the work we're doing through these cohorts. For example, tomorrow, real quick rundown, seniors are working on information about the FAFSA. Juniors are starting to look at some college admissions expectations across different types of post-secondary institutions. Sophomores are actually just coming off of having taken the pre-ACT tomorrow morning, so they're going to get a chance to catch their breath and actually kind of process what they just experienced for the first time, which is a very different type of exam than things like MAP and MCA tests. And our 9th graders are following up on what's called a prep survey, which is about more or less some social emotional readiness components that come with post-secondary planning, and seeing where they're at around some things ranging from time management to how they feel about managing a different workload at the high school level as compared to the middle school. So that's a quick sampler of what's been happening. These are the goals and objectives that we put in front of students on our first day in mid-September. And the first goal is actually one of the 3 Northfield Promise Career and College Readiness Action Team goals that we are working towards 100% of our graduates developing realistic plans for their future that they're able to share with a caring adult. And I think that first bullet actually bleeds quickly down to the 3rd bullet point in terms of accessing and leveraging our staff really effectively in terms of having an adult to share those plans with. And over the course of a school year, getting to know the adult that's in the room with them and vice versa. That's an important role that I take pride in as a counselor, but the reality is there are 400 plus students in my part of the alphabet, and to be able to sit down and go through those plans on a regular basis is pretty tricky. And we have phenomenal staff members in terms of developing relationships. So I think that's a really nice combo pack between the first and the 3rd bullet. The bottom 2, as this group well knows, ties in with what we are about as a district these days in terms of our relationship building and trying to draw support for all career and college paths. We're trying to be really intentional in our language, and I remember talking about it a year ago, that we see the word college and we instantly are trying to translate it often to post-secondary because we have students who I think come in with the mindset of one picture or maybe 2 pictures that are right here locally as far as what colleges look like, and helping them understand there are all kinds of different landing points after high school. The basis for a lot of the work being done in our CCR cohorts comes from Ramp Up to Readiness, which again is the program that was implemented last year in middle school health in 7th and 8th grade, and that is forming the basis for a lot of the work that we're doing in grades 9 through 12. The 5 pillars, if you can't quite see those, hopefully you can see them on your handout. Academic, admissions, career, financial, and social emotional readiness, all pieces of helping students prepare for life after high school. And we're combining that, so it's not just throwing lock, stock, and barrel a canned curriculum at students. We're trying to combine that with the resource we've had in place for several years, and that's Naviance, which really is a tool that we rely on heavily with seniors. Any seniors in the room are becoming all too aware of the need to use Naviance for things like requesting transcripts and communicating with their counselors. We also have some great ACT prep material housed in there. So there's a lot of post-secondary planning tools we've had access to, but now we're able to, I think, work with students more regularly and consistently through that program. So we're combining those resources with the Ramp Up materials. What we're expecting of students is that they attend, that they participate, that they understand what we're there for, and that we are making a note on transcripts as required by state statute as far as the World's Best Workforce legislation. And the way we're capturing that is that at the end of our year, students who basically complete the attend and participate components will receive a note on their transcript stating that they've successfully completed X number of years of career and college readiness activities here at Northfield High School. And just to give you a quick FYI on how those cohorts were formed, staff members identified 2 grade levels that they were most interested in working with, and every staff member got to work with one of their top 2 choices. And then students the first week of school filled out a primarily academic interest survey that also had some career interest areas identified in there. So we tried as best as we could in the time that we had to group students by interest areas, both career-wise and academically. Did we have some students who didn't complete that survey and got randomly plopped into some cohorts? Absolutely. And that's something that we can learn from towards next year. And I think students also realized after the fact that, oh, that survey meant something, and actually it resulted in something that I may or may not be super thrilled with, but there was a follow-up there. And we'll take a look at that at semester time too, as far as juggling some of our cohorts and helping students find the right fit as far as those that they're sharing some space with. And in talking to a lot of our teachers, that's something that they've appreciated, knowing that they have a room of students who are gathered around these interest areas, especially if a student doesn't seem to be looking, if they don't at first appearance or first blush look or feel like that's their people, but really it might be their people. And I think that's something that a lot of our students are hopefully going to be able to learn from too, that it's not groups they got to pick, it wasn't random and haphazard, but it is around some things that we'll be able to follow through and carry out as the year goes on. With that, again, I know I was here briefly a year ago, and now it's a very brief shot of what we've been doing so far. I'm interested in any questions that you might have about the CCR cohort model that we're just getting underway. As we've talked with staff about, we've had 5 25-minute sessions. So we only have so much to go on so far. We don't usually stop and over-evaluate our classes after 5 half-class periods. So we're not quite ready to dive into a wholehearted evaluation yet. At quarter time, we'll get some good survey data. But right now, we're just looking for questions and input and trying to take what anybody's got. So any questions on this piece?
Yeah, these are really excellent presentations. Board members, questions? Amy.
I'm very excited that you're doing this for the students. And I remember last year's presentation, and I can see that you're really building and coming up with something. My question is, and I know it's still early in the process, but parents are often involved with helping their students get into their future. And so do you have any thoughts on how you might somehow involve or engage parents?
I'd say parent engagement is actually a part that the Ramp Up to Readiness folks through the University of Minnesota are very cognizant of, and finally made a connection last week to have Joel share out there's a monthly newsletter that comes out, and our Ramp Up folks at the U share resources that they think will either fit in working with your students or working with your staff or working with the parent community. And we did share out an article about how to most effectively partner with your student on post-secondary planning in kind of that push-pull sort of fashion that I think takes place a lot of time when students are trying to be independent, and parents and guardians are pretty excited about a plan that they think is the one, and how to navigate those kind of tricky waters. So we definitely want to share out some resources. Tomorrow with seniors, they're going to get a Minnesota Office of Higher Ed document on how to do the FAFSA that we're asking students to, that's a good homework piece for parents while you're navigating all these applications and other things that come with planning is how can we, I think, use our students to bring some content home as well to parents. I think one of the best ways we'll be able to engage parents is actually through our students in a lot of this work, because we know those conversations are happening in a lot of homes, and we're not trying to control them, but we want to make sure parents know what's happening in the conversations here at school too.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I was just wondering, as far as a comment of, I know in Northfield, because we've got 2 colleges here, we're always kind of promoting the 4-year degree, and that's kind of what Northfield's about with 2 colleges, and I went to a private college like that myself. So I'm just wondering, have you seen any trends in the last, 10 years of, I think when we get kids involved, and even early on, we need to expose them to as many things as we can and say, hey, what are you good at? Where do you want to go to? And I think that there's so many technology and skill positions that somebody can go out and get a 2-year degree and land a really good job right away. And also, too, I don't want to get away from, the vocational jobs either. So, I want to keep a focus on that. I know things are leaning more towards technology, but kind of in a general question, what kind of trends do you see and what kind of encouragement do we do to look at a person and say, hey, you're good at this.
Right.
Here's where I suggest let's look for some opportunity for you.
Well, and I think that's part of what excites me about the CCR cohort model is it walks back and starts earlier with some of those exposure and exploration conversations within school in a way that it's not tied necessarily to Mrs. Hoffeld's math class, but she's working with some seniors who have an interest in areas related to math and can explore some different conversations than they can during a class hour. But bring that back to ninth graders in terms of interest inventories and some strength surveys, and then doing some work on, well, what's out there in relationship to what you're good at and what you're interested in, and let's just take a look and see what there is. And in the past, there's been maybe a week and a half long career exploration unit in civics class. Well, now we're taking something like that and we're able to spread it out and grow it throughout all 4 years while they're at Northfield High School. So I think some of it, we're getting a chance to start the conversations earlier with kids. And I think a lot of it is also going to be, I think, something we rely on some of our local area partners, whether it's businesses or some of the two-year schools that aren't too far away, to be able to come and talk to us about, what do they have, what is out there, what is in demand, where are you going to be able to find great opportunity.
And great, and then, what are the trends? I mean, a futurist is a
Health
big-
science.
Wow.
Yeah,
So-
because we're all going to retire and they're going to have to take care of us. Yeah, and that's the leader of the pack in the clubhouse right now as far as what everyone is seeing coming is health science is going to be big everywhere in this area.
Okay.
Manufacturing is making a nice return. Some of that's nearby. Wisconsin's booming, but there's an increase in this area. And then, like you mentioned, some of the really technology-specific, computer science-related things will certainly. We don't know what that's going to look like. I don't think it's interesting to listen to folks try and predict what those technology areas are going to look like. Those are the ones that we don't know yet. I mean, that's the students going off to college next year are going to be preparing for jobs that don't exist yet.
Right.
So it's hard for us to be able to speak to those yet.
And at the same time, it's a little bit of a reach, Jeff, to call it a trend. But we have plenty of jobs that are going unfilled because they don't have workers with those types of skills or that type of training. Partly because we're sending so many students off into these four-year programs, and then they're coming out and they're, whether they be overqualified or just have decided that that's not a place they're interested in. So really what we're hearing from a lot of our business partners is make sure they know these positions are waiting, that they're not only, as you described, good positions, good paying positions, but they are sitting vacant, just waiting for the next person who has those qualifications, both skills and soft skills, technical skills and soft skills to fill those roles.
We got this to follow up on Jeff's. You talked about 9 through 12, but I think we even have to look a little further back because what we know is that we're really working hard in all of our curricular areas to have a scope and sequence that is something that starts before high school. So could you guys talk about how the work that we've got at the middle school, the career tech exploration day, and how the health curriculum with the ramp up is tying into
Right.
the high school? Because I think it's very important they're starting before 9th grade,
Absolutely.
which
Yep.
is essential.
And that's one of the nice things being able to co-chair with Michael is that we get to do some vertical aligning and some vertical planning with a little more intentionality than, hey, what are you guys up to? We're able to dig a little deeper than that. So in 7th grade and in 8th grade, a significant portion of the health curriculum is the ramp-up curriculum being used at those levels. Some of the lessons, the curriculum goes back to 6th grade, and some of those lessons are being used by our teams in 6th grade. But it's really, I believe it was 20 of the 23 lessons were being hit in 7th and 8th grade last year that are provided by Ramp Up. And then that all kind of builds towards our May Career Exploration Day at the middle school, which has all of our 7th and 8th graders attending, and we're bringing over all 10th graders and a decent number of 11th and 12th graders. And that day is really all about that exposure to some of the hands-on technical trades, really shining a brighter light on some of those opportunities. So I think we're in a great place specific to the high school because as 9th graders are coming in now, I've had conversations with students that are different than with incoming 9th graders the last few years around what they've already learned and are bringing to the table specific to career and college readiness. And it's fun to see. It's actually similar to when things like Schoology and iPads came into play. The first few years we had them here, our older students especially were kind of looking around and struggling a little bit, but as the younger ones kept coming up and they'd had some of this background and some of this exposure and opportunity, all of a sudden that you can see that momentum building in directions of, hey, we've talked about this, and hey, we're coming back at it in a way that I know I saw something at the Career Exploration Day in 8th grade that I'm now tying back in 11th grade with some content in my Tuesday CCR cohort. So I think we'll see a lot of those kind of connect the dots over time, pieces take place.
Excellent. Other questions? Margaret?
Great presentation. I always appreciate a willingness to try something new, like with the Flex Hour and with this. This is wonderful. My question is staff. Do the staff who work with the college and Caretti cohort, are they all required to, or is this a volunteer? And then how do they find the time? Because it seems like staff are so busy.
Great question. Absolutely, everybody's in on it right now,
Okay.
which has allowed us to keep our cohorts at 20 or fewer students, which is really, really nice when you have them for a short amount of time, I think every Tuesday. And the way we approached that piece of how we're going to plan for this, we have a different staff member who's leading the charge at each grade level, because the scope and sequence is different at each grade level. So once a month, that grade level leader is meeting with the teachers who are working with that grade level cohort. So all the 9th grade cohort teachers are meeting with the leader to go over the upcoming month's lessons. And then built into the flex period, teachers are responsible for certainly teaching the content on Tuesdays, but then they have one half of one of their other flex days devoted to some prep time that is assigned specifically to be able to account for the time they're putting in to get ready for this time.
So they have a once a week prep for their cohort, but they also have a daily prep for their subject matter.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
and then they, if I heard this right, they get one of their top first or second choice for the grade level they're
Yep.
working with.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then we'll have a conversation as we move further down the path about, are we in a situation where our staff is excited to keep the same group of students for the next year? Or are we looking at a situation where our staff is more interested in getting really good at that grade level content and staying with the same content?
Okay.
And we'll find that out as we move forward.
I love it. Thank you.
No, excuse me. Yes, Ellen, no, board members were kind of combining Flex Hour and the Career and College Readiness Cohort. Kind of questions about either at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how I'm thinking.
So, Ellen, you had a question?
You've been waiting now.
Ladies first.
Okay. So yeah, my question was more back on the flex schedule, but I really appreciate Mark, and I'm interested in, after you get past 5 and hearing more, it's really, really exciting. So in the flex schedule, I was really interested in understanding a little bit more. I was happy to know that you're going to be surveying the students more, and I have a report from the DYC, because that ended up being the focal point of their conversation this past meeting. So I'll just throw out, Elias Lawler was going to spearhead wanting to get more of us interested in writing a survey with the other DYC members. So as you're thinking about the quarterly survey, they would be a great resource.
Love the idea.
So, but what I was interested in particular was the, I think it's going to be based on what they're doing at the U of M and HOPES, but you have that social emotional survey that's somewhere in here too that you're going to be tying into this. I'm not sure if is that related to the ramp up piece? Is it related to the flex schedule, or is it just more about the social emotional action team? So tell me a little bit more about how
Great
that's
question.
fitting in.
So the SEI, which is the social emotional inventory, is for lack of a better word, a survey that students have already taken. And that was preliminary to essentially the start of Flex in earnest. So some of those questions speak to some of the other services that we're offering through MTSS, whether it could be academic supports that are helping with social emotional health. It could be other programs that are built into our MTS system, from something as simple as the dogs that visit, the therapy dogs. But also specific to how the flex period is helping students respond to things like stress and anxiety. And so the information that we'll be able to glean from those existing questions, so students have already taken that once, we've got baseline data there. And so what we will glean in terms of our value for the flex period is what downward trends or upward trends are we seeing in the responses to that social emotional inventory. And that's really all about mental emotional wellness. In addition to that, we will have some very specific questions about the structure of the flex period. So really, the end of the quarter will be our first gathering of information about student feedback. And I don't want to say it's the first gathering for staff, because we've been gathering it as we've gone on the Google form. But for students, it'll be their first opportunity to formally say, these are the things that are real strengths about it, and these are things we'd like you to consider altering, changing, adjusting, augmenting. Might be about the physical structure of the building, might be the programs that we're offering, it might be about the 10-20, 10-20, and really be able to respond to that. So there are two pieces that will work together, but it's really gleaning two different types of information. One really about the social, emotional wellness of our student body, and then the other piece is really about the mechanism of flex and how that is either helping or inhibiting those goals that we have.
So the January one is the social emotional, and then you're going to be doing the more open-ended, looking at the structure of flex at a quarterly basis?
Correct. So we'll be able to double that up in January, because at the end of the semester is when we'll do the SEI, the social emotional inventory, and then we'll do that second quarter evaluation of the flex period at the same time.
And just one more. So then in the quarterly with the flex hour, is that then Mark was saying that you're not quite ready for evaluating because will that be looking at the CCR, or is that maybe in a later quarter that you'll be evaluating that?
I want to get some initial input and ideas from students, just from, we'll start a school year every year, so I want to see how things will look differently next year when it's not being rolled out for the first time. But to really, I think, get a lot of meat and potatoes out of the deal, we're going to hold off until the end of the semester to get a little more, I think, informed feedback from everybody. Because we're only doing it 25 minutes once a week, so it takes a while.
Thanks.
Amy? Oh, I'm sorry. No, you had a question.
For Mr. Lear, good report. Congratulations. So we're hearing about changes occurring at the high school, and it reflects the students' needs. And I'm pleased because it reflects the students' needs and doesn't reflect tradition's needs. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Noel.
As always, well said, Noel. Amy?
So I want to take you up on your offer and to see if a student or two might volunteer and come up to tell us how
music to my
they
ears.
feel about the flexible.
Folks, I will tell Miss Swan McDonald that you stepped up to this microphone, and life will be good for you for the rest of this.
Yes, it will.
Who's up?
Just to give a background for those watching, maybe watching the replay of the board meeting, we have the pleasure of having quite a few students from Sarah Swan McDonald's Global Studies class, of which part of the curriculum is talking about community engagement. So several of them have chosen to attend the school board meeting tonight. So board member Amy Gorowitz's challenge was if any students wanted to come forward and talk about their own experiences with the flexible learning hour. And so we have one brave soul so far.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Andrew, and I'm here to answer questions.
Well, tell me what grade you're in, and tell me, I assume you were around last year and now this year, right?
I'm
so
a
tell me
senior.
what you like about the flex hour and what could be improved.
Okay, sorry. So I'm a senior, and on Mondays we watch film in our football coach's room, and then Tuesdays we have the CCR thing, and then Wednesdays, because we're seniors, so we get to leave, so I get to go I don't know, go out with my friends or whatever, and go eat somewhere, and so yeah, that's basically what we do, and I pretty much enjoy that. It's kind of hard to be in high school and have money and then save it and then go out to eat. So, I balance between going home or going out to eat somewhere. So, yeah.
So it's good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any girls?
Anybody?
Shy seniors.
They don't like it so much.
So we got
A little general problem.
All right.
All right, what do I say?
Your name and your grade.
Okay,
And what you like.
All right. I'm Izzy Heshed, I'm a senior. For me, what I do for Flex is me and my group of friends usually just actually stay in the high school, just because for me, my house is a little further out, so by the time I get there and back, it's about a 20-minute drive round trip, which is kind of a bit of a time crunch when you just have to, make lunch for yourself and stuff. So we usually just pick like an empty classroom or like the yearbook room to eat lunch in, which is really nice because just in terms of like social interaction, I don't have a lot of classes with my friends. And you know, like last year or when I was an underclassman, you kind of had to cross your fingers and hope that you had lunch with your friends or you had class with your friends. So Flex is just a nice time that you're guaranteed to be able to spend time with the people that you like to spend time with. Yeah.
So
Thank you, Izzy.
I'm going to follow up with so tell me how you feel going into your afternoon classes this year versus your previous 3 years, because I think one of the things that Mr. Lear has talked about is just that intentional downtime potentially having a benefit of being more ready for your after. What's your experience with that?
Oh yeah, I definitely feel more relaxed after Flex. I don't know if it's because I got some food in my system and that usually helps me, but especially when it's kind of almost like an extra study hall too, so if you're stressed about like a test or if you kind of have a little assignment you need to do, it's really nice. You can kind of just get that done during lunch and you still usually have time to kind of just hang out and take a break too. So the second half of the day I find goes much quicker just because, I don't know, that hour is just such a nice time that's been set aside specifically just so you can kind of do whatever you want, you know, lower your stress levels or just relax or get work done. So yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Izzy. Any other students would like to provide some comments?
Just going to make a follow-up comment to hers, which if board members haven't read or a book or the synopsis of a book called When by Daniel Pink, it's a bestseller, New York Times bestseller, and the research that Daniel Pink has done is that this kind of thing is something that actually all human beings should just do. In fact, he's quoting quite a bit of research about how much more productive everyone is with actually somewhat more frequent breaks. And so I think that not only does this have the benefit of being right and good for kids, we also have some research that is supporting that to be an effective learner or to be effectively engaged in my work or to be effectively engaged with my relationships and my family, having these kinds of breaks during the day are essential. And he goes back through a number of examples in history and showing how societies that are very productive actually build these kinds of breaks in. So I think that while we are on I would actually even argue we may be on the bleeding edge of this because we are learning some things. Only 30 high schools in Minnesota that are doing this. My sense is that's probably about what you'd see across the country. I think you're going to start to see more and more people do this because it is just logical, and it does provide that opportunity for kids to just, for all of us, whether you're an adult or you're, next year we're going to allow students to have this complete freedom. You know, the seniors who are here next year, they don't have just a flex hour, they have a flex day, right? And under our old system, we never trusted kids who are 18 years old to make some of these decisions, and then we send them out. And now I think we're demonstrating some trust in their decision making, giving them some opportunities to experience that before they go out. And I'm actually really excited to hear from kids who graduate this year at the end of next year and ask, how did having this time, that self-directed time basically, help prepare you for that for people who go right into a job? You have to be able to go home for lunch and be back within a certain amount of time. That's an adult expectation, and yet we never provide that opportunity for students in our high school. So I'm really pleased to hear the things that students have shared. We're excited to see this come up. I would like to ask Mr. Ensrud and Mr. Lear just to share what have been the challenges so far, because there have been some, and how are we trying to solve them. We can't whitewash it with all this glorious stuff. It's great, but we know there's been some things that you're working through, so let's be transparent about it.
Yeah, I would say that the two pieces probably are interconnected. One, as I mentioned, the 10-20-10-20 has raised some challenges about students being able to get to where they want to get, particularly the first 10-minute cycle. As much as we can say, hey, how about if half of you go do an activity first and then come to the lunchroom? When your stomach is growling, your stomach is growling. So we're feeding, like I said, the lion's share, if I had to guess, probably 70% of our student body right at 11:11. And the interesting thing about that, and I don't want to cast a positive image on something that's a challenge, but you even watch the line waiting. The line waiting is different. So we have this really long line at the lower cafeteria a la carte area, but it's and maybe I'm looking at it through rose-colored glasses, but it's a different dynamic when the kids are standing there realizing that they've got a lot longer than 25 minutes. So they're interacting, they're connecting with friends. Izzy mentioned the piece about lunch. I cannot overstate the stress that lunch created for kids who said, if I only can have a friend in my lunch period. Or the converse of that, they show up for lunch and all their friends have a different lunch period. And now it doesn't matter. Everybody has the same lunch period and they can figure out when their friends are eating and they can eat together. They can do a study group together. Anything in that period is flexible enough where students can make it work. But those lines are a challenge because we've really asked food service, who has responded unbelievably. I can't say enough about that. But ask them to serve students as fast as possible. And the timing element of that 10:20 and the number of students who have to get to the lunch line is an ongoing challenge. So we've talked about some modifications to that time schedule where students would have more open access to the building for a little longer, particularly for the first 10-minute cycle. Second 10 minutes isn't such an issue because most of the kids have been fed by then. And so they can move to the places they need to get. But I would say food service challenge. Food service is not a challenge. Getting the kids fed and getting them in places is the challenge. We are looking to expand. We compost in the cafeteria. We've yet to move compost barrels out into the building proper. So we are looking to do that. The other piece is one of the things, Mark, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in Centennial they talked about was more or less students couldn't be required to do something. They committed to this idea of there are no requirements. So you can be encouraged to do something, you can be offered something, but you can't be required to attend a meeting or those types of things. We didn't subscribe to that wholeheartedly because we wanted to have access to an opportunity to provide academic supports to kids that we knew needed it, even though they might not know they needed it. So we wanted that flexibility. But we also remain steadfast to the piece that we want to make sure that time remains open for kids. So we have a student body who's very involved and very active in clubs, organizations, committees, teams. And so you heard that Monday during football season they watch game film. Well, if we do game film on Monday and then we do CCR on Tuesday and that student is on a committee on Wednesday, that they're moving that time slot from maybe evening to flex period, now we've left that student with 2 shots. And we want to make sure that we're staying on top of that. So we've been monitoring that piece to this point, but we also want to make sure that students feel like their time isn't being constricted by those things that were never intended to constrict it. Some things like that fit very well, and in some cases students might say, "Well, I prefer that to getting up early or being at this thing at night or doing it right after school," or whatever the case might be. And that has to be a case-by-case basis, but we have to be really careful about making sure that it remains the same thing for all the kids involved. And that's those that have those opportunities for flexibility every period, that aren't involved in all of those things, and those that are, and everybody in between.
And I just don't think we can emphasize enough how adaptive our child nutrition staff have been, because we talk about continuous improvement, but our child nutrition staff at the high school are modeling it, because CC Green, kitchen manager there, and our director of child nutrition services, Stephanie Strummy, it has been a challenge in terms of the process for them and their adaptation to it. But the example of the lunch cart, they aren't, they are saying, okay, what's next? What can we do to modify so we can adjust to this reality? And so again, they are living and breathing what we all want in terms of continuous improvement. So I just really applaud them. They have probably bore the most brunt of the change.
I would definitely say so.
And so they are just out of this world in terms of how they have adapted, because they know it's good for kids, and that's what their focus is. And so we just have to give them a public shout out because they have really done a great job.
I don't know that I've heard them utter the word challenge without "we'll make it work." It's a challenge, but we'll make it work because we know it's good. It's a challenge, but we and so it's been amazing, really.
Any other questions or comments? This just is so excellent, and we could really sit here all night and keep talking about this, so thank you.
Well, we have plenty more seniors that could step up.
I mean, it was great because you were able to talk not only about the flexible hour, but then to add the career and college readiness piece in terms of the curriculum was really a nice bonus. And then, you know, we also understand the changes that you're making within the building to accommodate, which is just huge and really exciting. So I had the opportunity to walk the high school with Joel today, and it's just really exciting. So if anyone has the opportunity to do that, we were all over the building, and it's just really, really great to see.
You're welcome anytime.
And it was, and I love the that you have that document right on your screen, and you were showing me where teachers and staff were weighing in on some of the challenges, and you're immediately responding with, you know, acknowledging that you heard and that you're working on, you know, whatever. So it's just really, really good and very exciting. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Okay, excellent. So we will move on to our second item for discussion this evening, which we have Molly Wieselman, Director of Human Resources, here to talk about another success story in the district, which is our self-funded insurance, health insurance. So welcome, Molly.
There you go. Good job. I think the seniors all left, so they weren't called up to answer questions about the benefits program.
I know, and I had convinced myself they were here to hear this interesting information. Apparently not. Nevertheless, I am here to talk about our self-funded insurance. I'm going to start by just recapping quickly some of the stuff that I had presented in January, just to kind of give you a sense of where we were and where we've come from since then. We were for a long, long time insured through the Southeast Service Cooperative with Blue Cross Blue Shield. And then we moved that out of the co-op in 2011. During our time at the co-op, we did see increases as high as 18.4%, and that's really significant to the pocketbooks of our employees and our general fund overall. And so we were one of the largest people in our pool at the Southeast Service Cooperative. And so even when we had a good year with claims experiences, because we were the largest employer, we still saw increases because our good experience helped outweigh the bad of the smaller groups in the co-op. So we did make a push to leave the co-op, and we did that in September of 2011. We left the co-op. They would not bid on our business outside of the co-op because Blue Cross Blue Shield has all the co-ops. So we did go with Medica in 2011, and that is when we made our move to go from fully insured to self-insured. And that was a very good move for us. And we also at that same time moved not at the same time, our self-insurance. We became self-insured September 1st of 2011. But then we moved back to Blue Cross Blue Shield in January of 2016. They had a better cost for our group. And we don't make these decisions lightly because health insurance is a very emotional thing for our staff. Just changing your insurance vendor is very emotional for our staff. So we make these changes. We make a lot of considerations before we would make a change. But we did move back to Blue Cross Blue Shield in January of 2016, and we also changed our renewal date at that time. We're always a September 1 through August 31 date for our insurance renewal, yet our flex plan and our HRA reimbursements, they were running on a different plan year. And so we lined all of them up, which made it much easier for our staff to navigate through that reimbursement process. And so starting at that time in 2011, we pay our own claims out of our self-insured pool. And as of September 30th of 2018, we have paid $4,662,395 in claims in that 9-month period. It hasn't been a great year this year, 2018. Our plan does run on a calendar year, not a fiscal year. So that's 9 months into our plan year. And it has been a difficult year for our plan. We have 14 people that are high claims right now. We've had some employees or dependents with some significant health issues. But our current goal for our self-insured pool is to keep our pool at 2 million or above. And as of June 30th of 2018, we were 3,648,700 over that fund balance, because our current fund balance is 5,648,700. So that graph hasn't been updated since January when we were here, but now it would show FY18 kind of at a flat, just a flat line going over, because we haven't really raised, we haven't had an increase in our fund balance, but we haven't seen a decrease necessarily yet either. So we are weathering our high claims this year. And another thing we did as of January 1st was increase our stop loss insurance, which is our reinsurance. So any claims that exceed 125,000 is picked up by our stop loss, but in the calendar year 2017, that was at 100,000. So we're now, at a higher risk for some of those higher claims in our group. So in the past, that the money that we would have left over, we would have left that on the table with the cooperative, and now that stays in our own self-insured pool. And then with that money, we have been able to overall really keep our plans, our rates from fluctuating a lot significantly, which is good for our employees because it is hard to see huge swings in our insurance premiums. So that has allowed us to stabilize our premiums. We decreased the overall health premiums by $100 for 2018. And we negotiated with the NEA to decrease their contractual contribution by $50. So the district pays $50 less a month, and our employees pay $50 less a month, which overall helps like our child nutrition budget, our community services budget, the general fund. So all the way around, that's a very good thing. So that was some of the information I had shared last winter. And then our district was asked to participate in Willis Towers Watson survey. And Willis Towers Watson is a global advisory and brokerage solutions company, and they are worldwide, and they are a very big company as far as insurance brokering. And so I did participate in that survey, and in order to give you a little bit more context, the things that they were measuring were cost efficiency, employee cost sharing, and then employee incentives like HRA funding towards a HRA health plan. So this first slide will show you our overall, how we ranked overall with program efficiency. And then to give you some more context of this, the database that they mention here is 2,248 companies in 18 industry groups. And I'm just focusing on medical with my presentation here tonight, but it represents an annual medical premium equivalent cost of $133.7 billion for more than 10.8 million enrollees. So it's the database itself is a very large comparison. And so we, and the adjustments you can see in the middle, the adjustments are for age, gender, family size, geography, and plan value. I'm not going to delve too far deeply into any of those things, but the graph to the left is the unadjusted benchmark, and that is before any of those adjustments for our particular group have been taken into account. We can't really do a whole lot about our family sizes of our families in our district, our age population, and the geographic. We can't also help that we have more males than females. That's just, or more females than males. That's just how school districts in general are. In our geographic area, we are affected by our closeness to the Mayo Clinic system. But that can also be a good thing for our employees as well. So But when you adjust for all those factors, you're looking at that second a dark purple column. That is the adjusted benchmark. And so Northfield Public Schools is 8% more efficient than the database as a whole. And then in the industry, which is actually probably more relevant for our group, is the governmental public sector group. Again, those same adjustments have been made. And in the industry, our public sector industry, we are 6% more efficient than the database as a whole. And then they gauge the delivery system, which is how we deliver our health insurance to our employees. We do have two different health insurance plans. One is a straight comprehensive major medical plan, and that falls on the handout under the POS column. And then we do have a high deductible plan with an HRA, a health reimbursement arrangement attached to it. So this shows that we have 75% of our enrollees in the HRA plan and 25% in our PPO plan. And so this is just showing that plan efficiency is based on the higher enrollment, and our HRA plan is working very efficiently. So you'll see at the top of that slide that both of our plans are on the more efficient side of that line. And then the cost, the employee contribution as a percent of the overall cost was another interesting aspect, I think, because although we've been able to grow our fund balance significantly since we went self-insured in 2011, the percentage that our employees have to pay for their insurance is less than the database average and the governmental industry subsection of the database. And that equates to, let's see, employees contribute less than the database and industry averages, and you can see the percentages there. If it says not applicable in our column, that means we don't have a plan that falls under that particular data point. So we just don't have plans like that. Is there any questions on that particular slide? Because this is really the thing that I'm most proud of, is that our employees are paying less than both our industry and the database average, and yet we have been able to grow our fund balance. So this was really good news for me when I saw this.
Molly, could you just talk about how that plays into, the reason that we have a good insurance program is for a number of different reasons, but one of the key ones is recruiting and retaining people. So it's not just about base salary, it's about take-home pay. So when you take this slide and you translate it into the why we do this, can you talk about how the way that we are ranking in this helps us recruit and retain people? Because we know talent is the most important thing that we have.
Yes, we do have a lot of people that come to our district and say they came here. The salary schedule, Northfield is a destination district for teachers, and many have told me that they've been waiting years and years to be hired here. They've gone through the interview processes, several times, and this is a destination that they want to be here. But our salary schedule tends to be a little bit lower than the metro districts, but it's the benefit package that they end up actually making at least as much, or if not more, here than they do in the cities, because they pay much less for their insurance. Even just as close as Farmington, they pay, I want to say it's $860 some a month for family insurance, and our most expensive plan is $344 a month for family insurance. So that's significantly different. Does that answer your question?
It does. What I want board members and people at home to hear is that this, one of the things that is a goal of ours is to hire and recruit and retain high quality and diverse staff. And it's not just about what's on the salary schedule, it's about the entire package. And as you listen to the rest of the presentation, this is such an exciting story because it is something that really truthfully does help us recruit and retain high quality people. We often get people in that sweet spot of their career, 6 to 10 years, who have learned someplace else, they've worked through their initial and then they come to us because they are looking for these kinds of financial arrangements in addition to a community that really supports education. So we can't gloss that over. It's just such a huge piece.
And then this particular slide just shows that our self-funded fees, administrative fees that we pay for our self-funded group are 20% less than the database or industry standards. So that is significant because, who wants to pay admin fees? So we have the Benefits Advisory Committee along with our broker, George, with One Digital. We have worked hard at keeping those admin costs, lower. And then this was a really good slide when I saw this when Kate Palm with Willis Towers Watson came down to Northfield to present this information to me. And I went through all the data with her, and then she showed me this page, which isn't part of the big report. It's a separate little thing that she pulled out. So out of that 2,248 employers that participated in this survey, Northfield Schools was in the top 48 of that database group as far as efficiency, overall efficiency and plan design, cost comparison, what are the cost percentage that our employees pay for their insurance, and then what the district also has to pay for the insurance. And that $1,500 that the best performing employers save on average equates to $703,500 when you multiply that by the number of participants we have in our health plan. So that was really significant information for our Benefit Advisory Committee. And here's really what I want to share, because this didn't come about overnight. This was many years of heavy lifting by our Benefit Advisory Committee. You don't make changes to health insurance plans easily. It's a very difficult thing to do. We have 5 unions in the district, and you can't make changes to health plans without a positive vote from all 5 of those unions. And so to make changes, we have our Benefit Advisory Committee where we have input from all these groups. They come to the table, we talk about all the things that, that we might want to consider in doing. So some of those things we researched, first I'll mention that when I came to the district in 1997, the highest paid person in the district paid nothing for their insurance, and our lowest paid employees in the district paid roughly $870 a month for family coverage. And that just seemed so backwards and uneven to me, as well as the Benefit Advisory Committee. And so we've worked really hard since then. And when we had Dr. Richardson come to the district, and then a few years later Matt came to the district, we had administration that was supportive of trying to reroute some of the past practices that had been in place for many years. And so we went from having 15 different rate tables for our insurance plans to having one. Now we've equalized that contribution from the district, and it doesn't matter what employment group you're attached to, you have the same contribution towards your insurance that the superintendent has or anyone else in the district. And so that was a very positive change. Salaries, note the difference in the responsibilities for any particular position, but that basic benefit should be equal throughout the district. So that was a big challenge, and one that we did finally work through. We spent significant time researching health reimbursement arrangements and health savings accounts to see if they were a valid option for our group. We had 4 health plans at one time. For a group our size, that's just not manageable. It's the less people you have enrolled, the less efficient any health plan is. So to have 4 for our size group did not make sense. So we eliminated 3. Can you imagine being told your health plan that you've been on for many years is now being eliminated? That was not an easy thing for our benefits advisory committee reps to, have to go tell their people in their groups. But we did eliminate 3 of the 4 health plans, and we tweaked and changed the 1 remaining plan. And then we did implement a new health plan with an HRA attached to it. That was in 2005. We made the move away from the cooperative, and we went self-insured, which was a huge move for our group. And we haven't had premium increases since 2012, and we even decreased our premiums for 2018. So when I say heavy lifting, these are not, and it didn't happen overnight. We had a vision, and it's taken us quite a while to get here. And we have, the implementation when Val came to the district, that was such a positive thing for our benefit advisory committee. Dr. Hillman sat on that committee for, quite a few years. We have had the same reps for most of these groups, and so they've learned the process and they understand, what it takes to keep our group in a positive place. And this is our benefit advisory committee members. George Vanderweet with One Digital, he's our broker consultant, but he is at all of our meetings and is elemental in a lot of the changes that we have made. Ray Coudray and Carol Beamer for the teacher and the EAs, Sarah Bourne for the office employees, Rita Lattimore for our custodial group. Now she's new. That particular rep has changed a bit over the years. Keith Nahava has sat on the committee for quite some time as a head custodian representative, and then Nancy Antoine is the principal rep. Andrea Nelson Walker is fairly new to the district. She came in 2016. She's our benefit specialist, and she also helps in payroll. And then Val and I round that committee out. So that is really all the information I have. Are there any questions? Val, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Nope, you did a great job.
Excellent, thank you, Melanie. Questions, comments? Ellen?
Well, thank you for coming back, and I really thought it was wonderful to have this additional data that you had from the brokerage. I'm curious about a couple things. One is on one of the industry efficiency slides. It talks about the current, translates into a current savings of, I think, $400,000.
0.4 million, right. Mm-hmm.
So what does that, is that if we were not so efficient, we would be having to take, that would be either asking the employees for a greater contribution,
right.
We would be doing a greater contribution, which would come right out of our general fund, all of those pieces, right?
Yes.
And then, what was my second question? I guess when I'm looking at this recruit and retain piece, which is just really remarkable. So thinking about that we have this contribution and we've been able to keep it flat and then just actually reduced it. And you talked about how we have some challenges this year, but yet it looks like the fund balance is staying flat. Is there a max where at some point we'll have to do something different with the fund balance? And I guess that I'm looking at, these are great numbers. And this is just a wonderful, wonderful story. So I'm just curious as to, you can't look into a crystal ball, but how do you foresee this?
Well, we are currently reviewing our renewal for 2019. We met in late September. We meet again actually Thursday of this week. The Benefit Advisory Committee meets again to somewhat finalize our renewal for 2019. But we spend a lot of time, and once a month we sit down and actually look at the previous month's claims. Val and Andrea and I meet with George once a month, and we actually keep a very close eye on where our claims are, what they're doing. Unfortunately, in 2017 we only had 2 or 3 high claim cases, and so then we made the decision to move our stop loss, our reinsurance, up from $100,000 to $125,000, and now we have 14. You can't, there is no crystal ball, you can't look at that, but we did have, Val, was it close to $8 million in our reserve? Close to $8 million, it wasn't quite there.
We had projected being over 7.
Right. And, it was never our intent to be a bank. And so we didn't want to continue charging the premium we were just to bank more money. That, you know, we want it to be a balance of having enough to pay our claims, but yet keeping that coverage at a affordable place for our employees and the district, because, you know, obviously the district picks up a pretty big chunk of that as well. So you're right, Ellen, as we get more claims, we have to very carefully weigh and measure what we do with the premium we charge to our employees. We have a lot more discussion to do this week on that yet, but we're hopeful that we can probably go another year without increasing our premiums.
Thank you. Can I add to that? I think one of the things that for us is most challenging is wanting something consistent that staff can expect. And so just the numbers that Molly's talking about, the change we made, plus the increase with the number of high claimants, we have typically increased the fund balance over $1 million. So we're talking about $1 million basically spend down in 1 year. And so when we're looking at $5.5 million, if we make too drastic of a change, we can only sustain it for a year or two. So making sure that we're choosing things that we can at least maintain for multiple years, and then if that trend is consistent, we can look at adding further. So just making sure we're managing that so that we aren't, you know, coming back 2 years from now saying, oh, I know that decrease was real great for 2 years, but now we're going to go back up. So just really being intentional and keeping that consistency for staff. So
Jeff?
A good job on doing that. I mean, that's when you have so many things. I mean, usually to take something so complicated and then make it more simple and then save people money. I mean, that's an amazing feat. So, I mean, that's great that you put that together. Was it kind of a progression of time, and you just kind of like, oh, let's be self-insured? So how did that progress? And then why do more districts not do that or try to?
You know, it wasn't an overnight thought. It was something that, you know, we researched for quite a number of years, and our group was kind of on the cusp of whether or not it would make sense for us. We're big enough that it could, but small enough that it could be a disaster as well. And so we were waiting for the right opportunity to make that happen. We had done a lot of research about what that might look like, so we were prepared for that. So it was a very much a progression, and it was a vision, you know, that we had in where we wanted to go, where we were and where we wanted to be for our employees. And again, you know, the benefit advisory committee, when you have to have the input and approval of, you know, your pretty much five largest employment groups that are unionized, to tell them what you're going to do and then expect them to buy into that just doesn't work well. And the benefit advisory model really gave those groups a voice, and our reps on those the committee from those groups are so well versed in what the process has been, and they have buy-in and they bring that back to their employees, and it has worked extremely well. We try not to make too many drastic changes, you know, too soon, because it's very emotional to have your health plan change, and we try to move things in the right direction without making it a drastic shock, you know, for our employees to, even though all the changes have been good, change is hard. Change is very hard for people. They get used to, you know, how it is, and changing is hard. So kudos to the benefit advisory committee. You know, one person can't do all this. It does take that group, I think, to successfully move things in a positive direction.
Could you just also talk about the dental and how that was kind of something that we had been doing self-insured for some time, and how that helped build the confidence? I think it's an important part of the story.
Yeah, we moved our dental insurance, because that's a completely different animal than health insurance. We moved our dental insurance to self-funded in 2005, and we have not ever, since 2005, increased that premium. In fact, 1 year we had a premium holiday where our employees paid nothing for their dental insurance. And then the following year, we brought the premium halfway back up to where it had always been, and they paid half of the amount in order to spend down because again, we weren't trying to be a bank, our goal for our self-funded dental is 200,000, and we had gotten to a point where our self-funded pool was,
Like 560,000.
yeah, so, we didn't feel right continuing to charge those same premiums, so we did the premium holiday. And that kind of gave us a feel for what self-funding is, although you really can't compare the one to the other. Because even though it worked really well for our group for dental, it could have been a disaster for the health insurance, but it worked out good, so. So we were happy with it, and we had gotten a decrease in our premiums, and that gave us the opportunity to make that change. But all the work we had done on the background for several years prior to that prepared us to, made us ready to make that move when that opportunity came.
Excellent. Other questions, comments? No.
Great report.
Thanks, Noel.
And, it's good vision, but it's also a great success. And probably the most exciting part for me is that it's all grassroots.
Yes.
Beginning to end, it's all grassroots,
Mhm.
and that's great.
Excellent. Other questions, comments? Well, thank you, Molly, and thank you for the committee, and it's just good timing that you will see them on Thursday, so please extend our sincere gratitude for them. And the Watson survey just really reinforces what we knew. It's just it's an excellent story. It's a wonderful success story, and to see it, compared nationally is just really gratifying.
Can I make just one more, couple more
Absolutely.
comments? Because, again, this is the kind of thing that when the average person in the public hears it, they hear the word insurance, and for most people, their brain goes a different direction. When Molly hears insurance, she's in her wheelhouse. And while she's been very deferential to the Benefits Advisory Committee, this would not have happened without Molly Bieselman. And so the work that she did to earn the trust of people, because that's what has happened. And she has earned trust with people, and there are people who will tell you she's the most trusted person in the district. And that is how this has worked. And if you think about our core values of stewardship, the stewardship that, who has not had an insurance premium increase since 2012?
Yeah,
I mean, you just read every day about the horrors of insurance. It is just one of those things that you say it's too good to be true, but then when you look at the story and you look at the data, it clearly tells us that we have got things going in the right direction. You think about efficiency. How often do you hear in the media that governmental entities are inefficient? Baloney. This is exactly the kind of data that proves it. We are far more efficient in this case than any private insurance that I have ever seen. And again, that's because of the trust and the work that people have done with us. But it also comes back to relationships. And the relationships that have been developed with the heads of our unions, because this is a collective piece. And again, that goes back to the work that Molly, started. And then I think we have to give kudos to Ray and Carol too, because they have been with you from the beginning.
From the beginning, yeah.
And there was this window. I mean, I clearly remember the meetings when we had the window where we said, if we're going to do it, now is the time. And if you remember, we came and presented to you. And all of the work that had been done to that point, the district was able to take advantage of all of those things because it had all the infrastructure. And when the timing is right, we seize the opportunity. And it's been a wild success story. And it does bring people here. There's absolutely no question about it that it brings high quality people here. And when we think about how important good teachers, good educational assistants are we have been not having as many openings in custodial or child nutrition. We have some of the most applications that we've had in those areas in years. And we know it's because word is getting around, it's not just about the pay, but it's about the benefits that you can have. And the fact that we have flattened the structure, I think is really important. It is an equitable piece. So this is one of those things that, again, I think a lot of people, their just mind turns off when they hear it. This is incredible.
Their eyes actually glaze over.
I mean, this is incredible, and it is a success story that people should be really paying attention to because it shows that public entities are good stewards. It shows that we are efficient. The number I'm most proud that we're 20% more efficient. It's not like it's 20% more efficient than 2,200 other companies. That is just out of this world. And so we cannot thank Molly enough. We cannot thank Val enough, who's a major player in this too, and all the people. But it was Molly's vision. It was the trust that she built with people, and the willingness and the confidence to execute at the right time that has put us here. And it's incredibly gratifying to see a person's vision come to fruition. So I just cannot thank you enough, Molly, and the 600 plus employees in the district can't thank you enough. It is truly a success story. So I hope that it's something that we might be able to get a good article in the paper about at some point, because it's really this huge story. And so
It's amazing.
I think it flies in the face of the standard narrative. And so this is one of those things we need to stand up and say, hey, look at this. This is really good for our district. It's good for kids because it brings in more employees. We have more applicants for the pool. We can really hire the best. It's good for everybody. It's good for kids. It's good for employees. It's good for taxpayers. It's good for everybody.
Well, when I go to our state MASPA organization and hear other districts that are taking a 15 to 35% increase, and then it's my turn around the table and I say, well, we took a little decrease there. They look at you like, what? So that even puts it in bigger context is, state average is about 12% increase is the trend. But, many districts are well above that, and they had to abandon their self-funded insurance and go back to fully insured because they didn't have the money to pay their claims, and so it hasn't gone as well for some. So we are very lucky that it worked out well here. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes amazing reports tonight, really good stuff. So we'll move on. Second board meeting of the month, we have committee reports. It's an opportunity for board members to share the work of their liaison committees. Ellen Iverson actually has 3 committee reports. So Ellen, I will turn that over to you to report in whatever order you wish.
Sure. So I hadn't submitted a report in some time, so I got busy.
Overachieved today.
So the first report, I guess I can report on solo, and the other 2 I'd invite the other board members. So the District Youth Council has met, I've been at 3 meetings so far this year. They got together for a retreat in August, and then they had a meeting in September, and then there's the most recent meeting was last week. And Dr. Hillman and I were really excited because we met with Malia about a new sort of engagement with them, getting them more involved in some of the different committees in the district so that they'd have a better perspective on things. And I really saw that coming to fruition at this last meeting where they had the reports. And they had excellent reports on the committees that they sat on with really what was most relevant and of interest to the students, and Val, you'll be really interested that finance is of high interest. Not only the finance advisory, but they came to the board meetings, the questions they had to me about school finance, that it was just, I thought, wow, remarkable, just wonderful to see and hear. One of the pieces that came up at length was the flex hour. Might be because we were actually meeting over flex hour and Malia had fed them too, so they weren't, so that was in their mind. But then one of the students was on the wellness committee, and that had come up at the wellness, was the idea, or they were concerned whether students were not eating at all. And so they just discussed some of the challenges, knowing that, it's a value to them. They like the flex hour, but what were some of the challenges? So I sort of sketched that out, and where they came to is they'd like to have some sort of student voice. And so I think Elias Lawler was going to kind of step up and with a couple of the other members. So I was really happy that I didn't realize that Joel was going to present today. So, and I had texted Malia when I saw that was on the agenda, so that that would be a way for them to follow through on it. So I think part of it is some of the students there are really involved in a lot of the different committees, so they're feeling like so many of the days are filled with meetings like the DYC had happened to happen. And so when they do have the flex hour, it isn't as flexible maybe. And I think that getting more of a student voice will get a sense of, for some students it might be really working really, really well as is, and for other students they're trying to negotiate that. So anyway, exciting that they're so engaged in some of the district work. The other 2 committees, so Robin, Noel, and I are on the policy committee, so if either one of you have other things to add, I just wanted to say we've got rolling, and it's a very thoughtful time to go through policy. So I'm not sure if we will accomplish everything we want to, but we're doing it in a very, I think, structured, thoughtful way. And Jack actually reported on the DYC about the policy piece, and they were very interested that we were looking at changing some of the language around citizenship and to district resident, and then the pronoun piece came through with some of the reports. So that was interesting. So I don't know if Rob and Noel, if you had anything. kind of just starting the process, so stay tuned, I guess. And then,
Policy equates the same kind of thing as insurance does.
yeah.
I just appreciate that we're pursuing that and that we're really, it's been a while since we've tackled all the policy. And you're right, there's, again, as Molly used the term heavy lift, I think that's where we're headed, but I think it's really good and it will be excellent comprehensive review of our policies.
The other thing that student Jack, he was really interested in, Joseph had said the same thing, that there is something in our policy that by a simple majority, we could decide to not have, like, just set aside all our policies and not with any, remember?
Oh, yeah, you bet, yeah.
And they were just, but and so that, there was a lot of questions in the DYC, well, how could that happen? And anyway.
And that's why we review them, because
Exactly.
there are things that, you know, over time may have made sense that you look at it and you say, well, wait a minute, that could be a problem. And so that's why we're reviewing them on a regular scheduled basis now.
And then Northfield Forward, and Julie and Margaret, you might have other things to add. I wanted to highlight the work that Tammy McDonough and the science team did because they were really a spotlight. But I don't know if either one of you have thoughts on, we all broke into different groups for the site improvement plans.
Summed it up very well.
No, the Northfield Forward, again, the new structure working really well. And to Ellen's point, we had 3 students at Northfield Forward, and they really provided some really good context, and their perspective is always really appreciated. And, you know, Tammy McDonough reporting on her work with the 8th grade science and the results she had in the MCI, it was just such a great story about collaboration. And then really the challenge that we really we know exists is how do we really replicate that district-wide. And so good, all good committees. So board members, as you're meeting with your liaison committees, we'll keep earmarking the second board meeting of the month to review that. And I think it's a great opportunity for the board members to get sort of an overview of what's happening within some of our committee work, and then the opportunity to meet, you know, to ask questions one-on-one with that particular board member if you have any further questions. So excellent. Okay, so we will move on now to approval of the consent agenda. I don't believe, there weren't any personnel items in the table file to be added.
Just a couple.
Oh, just a couple. I'm sorry, you're right, there were. So we're just a couple. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping? Is there a motion to approve the consent grouping? Moved by Jeff, is there a second? Second by Ellen. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on now to items for individual action. They are actually all resolutions this evening, which will require a roll call vote, but we'll work our way through them. The first is a resolution of the school board supporting an application to the Minnesota State High School League Foundation for potential grant opportunity we would get to offset some student activity fees. So is there a motion to approve the resolution of school board supporting Form A application to Minnesota State High School League Foundation? Moved by Margaret. Is there a second? Second by Amy. So are there any questions or comments? There was some supporting documentation in our packets around this. Are there any questions or comments? So this is a resolution. Anita?
Hurwitz?
Aye.
Hardy?
Aye.
Stratton?
Aye.
Cornell?
Aye.
Colangelo?
Aye.
Iverson?
Aye.
Pritchard?
Aye. Motion carries. Our second is a resolution authorizing transfer of funds from the general fund to the debt service fund. So the formal motion there would be, is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the transfer of funds from the general fund to the debt service fund to make the debt payments on the district series 2017A facilities maintenance bond issue? Moved by Amy. Is there a second? Second by Ellen. Questions or comments?
Val, I
Val
think
would be
Val
here
should
to-
just make a couple of comments here
Okay.
about what this is about here.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you, Val.
Yep, so this is for the Bridgewater roof bond that we did using our long-term facility maintenance funds. Because the levy process happened so early, we do that in August. It was finalized in December. And then we ended up doing these bonds in the spring. So there wasn't a way to go back and basically add the 105% debt levy. And so part of the bond documents was basically an agreement that we would use our long-term facility maintenance fund balance or revenue to basically pay that first year interest payment. So this is just moving those funds from our long-term facility maintenance over to the debt service for this 1 year to make that payment. And now it's on the cycle. So it's in the debt service levy for the one that's coming this fall. So.
Excellent, as always, a very thorough but understandable explanation of what sounded was a lot of jargon that we had to obviously include in the motion. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any questions then for Val before we proceed? No? Okay. So this is a roll call.
Hurwitz.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Stratmore.
Aye.
Cornell.
Aye.
Colangelo.
Aye.
Iverson.
Aye.
Pritchard.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. We do have an additional item for individual action, and that was included in the table file. So if board members want to pull that from, I'll give you a minute to find that because the motion is there. I will ask for the motion, and then Jeff Seeley from Ellers is here to explain it more in depthly. We'll get the motion on the table. So is there a motion to approve the resolution awarding the sale, determining the form and details, authorizing the execution, delivery, registration, and providing for payment of general obligation school building refunding bond series 2018A? Moved by Noel. Is there a second? Second by Rob. Fortunately, we have Jeff Seeley here to explain that mouthful that I was barely able to get out. But so Jeff, thank you for being here. And just as a reminder, board members, you received a very thick packet, which is the backup to the motion.
Yes, thank you. Always a pleasure to be here. And as you know, we were looking at selling refunding bonds, and we conducted that sale today. So what you have in front of you is a resolution awarding the sale of those bonds, and I also handed out what we call our sale day report that details the results of the bid process today. So we sold bonds in order to refund or refinance the 2020 through 2022 maturities of your 22.6 million school building refunding bonds that were issued in 2010. So this is the second time that they've been refunded. And as we spoke about earlier, you only had 3 principal payments or maturities left. So it was not a long duration, but it was over $7 million worth. We did receive 8 bids today, and just to give you an idea where they're from, on page 3 and 4, you can see that Fifth Third Securities of Cincinnati, Ohio was the winning bidder. Baird out of Milwaukee, Northland out of Minneapolis, Piper Jaffray out of Minneapolis, Wells Fargo out of Charlotte, Hilltop Securities out of Dallas, FTN out of Memphis, and SunTrust out of Nashville. So your bonds do draw quite a bit of interest from investors. So you received 8 bids, and the winning bid was from Fifth Third Securities of Cincinnati, Ohio. And just to mention, you did maintain that very high rating that we talked about last time. Very good job again. The rating report is actually the last few pages, so if you want to read what the rating agency actually had to say, they commented on your very strong finances and on your financial practices. So excellent job. I keep putting my hand on this and moving.
So you can move that, yes.
I see it flashing. But so very good job on the rating again. So the winning bid had a premium. They paid you $380,000 more than what you were asking for. So what happens is we reduce the bond size by that amount. And that is one of the things they do in order to keep the bonds marketable. What they do is they charge you a higher interest rate, but in return, they pay you for that higher interest rate, so you get extra money. So this is why this bond is 7.3 million. When we were talking last time, it was 7.7 because we were able to reduce that bond amount. So the winning bid was about 2.23% true interest cost. A month ago or so with the pre-sale, we were looking at about 2.15. We were a little concerned because short-term rates were going up. In fact, they've gone up over 1/3% in 3 weeks. We did not see that large of a step increase in your bonds, mainly because of strong rating and so forth. So we did see a little bit of creep upwards on the interest rate, but not what we were seeing throughout the market. So the savings is about $169,000. We were projecting about $8,000 more. So you still have substantial savings. And the attachments, I already told you about the bid items on the first few pages of the attachments. But on page 6, that's your prior or your bonds that are being refunded. You can see they had a 4% interest rate. On page 7 are the new bonds. You can see those have a 5% interest rate. But remember, I told you they paid $381,000 more than what you needed. So you get the $381,000 and you offset those coupons by that. And essentially your true interest rates, if you go back to page 3, you can see the rate and the reoffering yield. Your true interest rate will be the yield. So 2%, 2.12, and 2.22. I know it's a little confusing, but essentially they gave you more money than what you wanted. They're going to charge you 5%, and that's out to 2%.
We'll take it.
Yeah.
Did you follow that? And of course, your savings are around $55,000 a year on page 8. Of course, you're levying the extra 5%, so it's closer to $60,000 a year that you're saving your taxpayers. Those are direct savings to the taxpayers. So any questions on this?
Jeff, thank you. This is the backup documentation. It's just really good to be able to see it here. Questions, comments, board members have? Yeah, again, I like, that we continue to emphasize this is savings directly back to our taxpayers. So every dollar counts. Ellen?
So this is probably more for Dr. Hillman. So we're going to save $59,300 per year to the taxpayers in payable 2019 through 2021. What does that bring us up to? Like we were talking about the last 10 years because of our refunding.
Well, we were previously at about 5.6 million over 10 years. So if we take it, so we're going to be up above nearly to 5.8 million over 10 years. That's really good. Again, goes back to stewardship. It goes back to efficiency. We are grateful for our partnership with Ellers. Val Mernsdorf, our finance director, and Ellers have a very tight relationship. We are watching the markets because, again, what's happening is, and Jeff, just make sure I'm saying this adequately, trying to boil it down, is that years ago when board members and administration were doing a bond referendum, they told people it was going to cost X amount of money, and over the life of those bonds, it has actually cost the taxpayers less than what was promised at the time. And so I think that as we think about the current bond referendum that we're working on, we have a projection of what that's going to cost taxpayers over time, and at the same time, our history would suggest that it would be less than what we're telling them right now. So in terms of transparency, we are telling them a number that we actually think will be lower, but we're telling them the greatest, what's the total exposure really over time. Val, do you want to add anything to how this has affected our financial statement? Because I think it is really a good story as well.
I mean, I don't have anything other to add than the bond rating we'll talk about, but it has, it's gratifying to be able to tell the taxpayers that we've saved them over $5 million.
Almost $6 million now. We can round up now.
So, and again, in the grand scheme of things, when it boils down to an individual, maybe it's a couple dollars, but it's still better than nothing. So.
Amy.
So I just want to be clear, this money goes back directly to the taxpayers and does not, so it's not levied from the taxpayers? And it doesn't go into the budget of the school? So it's not like all of a sudden we have $60,000 more a year to go hire somebody or?
That's exactly right. The school district, it's nothing that enters our general fund. Val, would you just want to talk about how it reduces our levy in coming years?
Yep, so if you recall the levy that I presented in September, that debt service amount is basically our principal and interest payments times 105%. And so we're just levying 50,000 less basically starting next year for this particular payment.
That's great.
Yep.
Other questions, comments? Jeff, it is always great to see you, and again, we just appreciate the relationship you have with Val and with the district and what Ellers and Associates, your expertise and your vigilance, and you know, the almost $6 million goes in. Huge credit to you for helping us achieve that, so thank you.
Well, thank you. We have a very good team at Ellers, and we appreciate the relationship we've built with you. Now, you have a resolution.
Yes.
I left a packet for signatures with Val. Those can be taken care of later. I do have one form that after you pass the resolution, I need your signature, Julie, and Noel's
Okay,
to take with me.
good. Could we have, then once we pass the resolution, have Jeff do that quickly? So
Absolutely,
we
you
can move
bet.
on with
Yep.
you have a commute home tonight, no doubt. So, okay, so we do have a motion and a second, so we can do the roll call vote for the resolution. Anita?
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Hardy,
Aye.
Stratmon,
Aye.
Cornell,
Aye.
Colangelo,
Aye.
Iverson,
Aye.
Pritchard.
Aye. Motion carries.
So Jeff, if you want to bring that up,
Just
we'll
bring it
get
forward.
Julie and Noel to sign it.
We'll
And
sign it quickly. Yes. Sure.
we can certainly move on if you want. Paul.
Yes, that does actually take care of our items for individual action tonight, so we can move on to items for information. Dr. Hillman will share the co-curricular additions that were included in the packet.
Yeah, so as you know, now a couple times a year over the last few years, we modified the way that we adjust coaching and advisor positions in the district. And so what happens is the co-curricular committee, which is inclusive of our activities director, administrative representative, several coaches, Molly Biesemon, our director of human resources, is a member of that committee. They look at the current reality of our coaching staff, the numbers that are needed to support the student athletes or the students participating in activities, and they make some recommendations to me, and then I work through those with the committee or with the representatives from the committee, and then bring you forward some recommendations. So as you remember, last year we were doing some substantial cleanup because it had been several years since we had adjusted any of our positions. And so this year there are some pieces, and again, no action tonight. We'll ask you for action at the next meeting, but just going through the fact that we are requesting you consider a couple of additions for middle school golf. And this is due to some they want to expand it to 6th graders to be able to participate. Currently, 7th and 8th graders essentially play up to a certain extent. We really want to have a true middle school program here. It's a popular program, and again, as you know, we have actually very few school-sponsored sports at our middle school. That goes back to some budget adjustments in the mid-2000s. Many of our junior high athletics are actually run by community groups. And so this is an opportunity for us to have another spring activity for all of our middle school students. It would expand it to 6th graders, and again, golf has been something that's been very popular. The next couple of pieces, when we think about the high school dance team and we think about the high school softball team, I'm going to ask Val just to help me a little bit with this, and the fact that for many years we had booster clubs or sports-specific booster clubs who would fundraise to hire an extra coach. And that was perfectly fine for many years, but in the last few years there's been some changes in how we're allowed to use those student activity accounts to where it's no longer allowed to be funded through that. You'll also see that there are some additional participants in both of those areas. If you look at softball, there's 47 participants, and you'll see that 41 participants in the dance team. Val, would you just briefly talk about that rule change and why we're suggesting that this come to the district coffers at this point?
Sure. So for several years, and statewide, districts have had student activity accounts that the students would fundraise for an additional coach. Sometimes a specific coach to work on a specific skill, sometimes just an extra body. But that was something that they would fundraise for, and then basically the student activity fund would transfer the funds into the general fund, and we would pay for the coach out of the general fund. In May of 2017, maybe 2016, MDE came out with a revised student activity manual. They call it the Manual for Activity Fund Accounting. And it basically banned it entirely. No gray area in any way, shape, or form, just no payroll out of the student activities. So that put districts in kind of a awkward position because there were several districts that had similar arrangements. Most of the ones that I have reached out to just to ask how they've handled this have either done something at the district level or basically asked their booster club to take over that process. So those are the two routes districts have been going.
I want to be specific. I previously mentioned about a specific booster, and I was incorrect, and I misspoke, and it's the student activity account, so we want to be really clear about that. So I apologize for that misstatement on my part. So we just want to explain, these are things that these student activity accounts have been funding for many years, and it's really become part of the program. And so we really feel that we need to absorb that into the, but from here on out, there isn't that opportunity. And so these are really the only couple out there that we have in terms of things that student activity funds had supported. So it is a piece that we don't think that it's fair to take them backwards. And we do think that it's something that we should look at. And they're hourly, which are relatively minimal overall, but they are considered hourly positions. The final two that we have here is one is strength and conditioning coach. And this is specific to the fact that adding an assistant coach for the spring season, because what we're seeing is we're seeing a continued increase in the number of student athletes who are using the weight room after school. And of course, in the weight room area, it's very important to have the appropriate level of supervision. And so we just want to make sure that we have that. And again, what we're seeing is increased participation in all seasons, but in the spring there had been less staffing, and looking to add that assistant for the spring season, again at an hourly rate. And then finally, Nordic Ski, adding an assistant coach. So we have seen an increase in that particular program of 22 students since 2015-16. So you think about that. Before that, there were about 30 student athletes in Nordic Ski. We are now up to 52. So that's a pretty substantial increase. And again, the nature of that particular sport, because we're sending students out to ski on their supervision and the ability to help people with individual kinds of skills. Adding this additional hourly piece, we obviously are getting some additional funding through the student fees that are being collected, and again, that's a pretty substantial increase over the last 3 years, and so recommending that we look at an additional hourly coach there. And again, no action requested tonight. It is simply something for your consideration. We'll bring it back at the next meeting. So a variety of reasons. This list is a lot smaller than the ones that we had last year, if you recall, because we have cleaned up a lot of those items since moving to where the board directly approves or does not approve additional coaching positions or modifications. So we brought it to your attention this evening. We'll ask you to vote on it at the next meeting, but we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have right now. Did you have something you want to add?
I can bring an estimated cost of kind of historically where those hourly ones have, just so there's at least a ballpark.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Amy.
So I have a couple questions about it. So like with the Nordic Ski position, if that's based on the number of people on the Nordic Ski team, if there's a substantial drop, would there be a reduction in how many?
So that is actually the idea of this approach to adding or subtracting coaches, because in the past we would actually negotiate the number of coaches directly with the Northfield Education Association while we negotiated their contract. And so once the number of coaches were in the agreement, there was very little modification to it over the 2-year period of the contract. And so yes, the fact would be that if we see a drop in participants, what we would ask the committee to do is to be able to look and say, okay, that's an area where we've had a reduction in those number of students, we can certainly pull that off the table. Again, that would be something that will be brought before you to be able, and in addition, the history has also been, even though there have been coaching positions that have been authorized in some cases to hire. If there has been a lesser number of students, the history has been that they haven't hired all those coaches that they were authorized to when they've had a reduction in participation. So it's a piece where we could either bring it back to you formally for you to reduce that from the grid, or the activities director. What I would recommend to the activities director is if they are seeing a drop, don't fill the position for a year, and if we see that to be ongoing, then bring it back to the board to reduce it.
And then my other questions was sort of about the dollar cost for each one, because I noticed with the asterisk, it says that's the base level. So, you know, I guess I don't have a sense of how much the total is that we're being asked for, and also how you see that money coming out of the budget. So if we're supposed to be sort of responsible for this, I don't understand enough to understand how that would work. So that would be my question for next time, or?
Well, we can answer some of it right now. One of the things is Val will bring a history of those hourly positions, and then this is one of the first times we've looked at the hourly piece, and one of the things that we'll look into is creating a cap, in terms of the amount of hours for those positions. We will bring that adjusted, because we normally have had a dollar figure for you at the bottom.
Right.
But we're still identifying this now, but we still wanted to make sure you had it for your consideration before the next time. So we'll, of course, do an update for that, as we typically have done. And then just your question about that first piece is that, so just like when we hire a teacher, we don't always exactly know, if we're bringing in someone with experience or not, because the position hasn't been hired yet. So we have used over time an estimate of what the average person, will come in at. And so that's something that we've used for our budget projection models and those kinds of things. And as we're moving forward, we have limited experience in this particular part right now. So that 2143 means someone who comes in with no experience coaching middle school golf. Now, remember when we asked for experience, if I played golf for 25 years, I've never coached, that doesn't count as experience. It actually is direct experience coaching in a program very similar to this. So in this case, actually what I will tell you is I'm relatively confident that the person will be at the lower, a first year person, because those are the kinds of people you get to apply for middle school positions. We may have someone who comes at a step 2 or 3, but as we continue forward, what we need to show you here is what's the base cost, because we don't know exactly who's going to be hired. And as we continue to work forward and look at those things, we will create some of those, some of that predictability, if you will, in our budgeting models like we've done in the past. Val, do you want to say anything about that?
No, I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay. And again, we didn't have all the hourly data for you tonight, but we still wanted you to know about the positions, because there are some for the winter season that they are going to want to look at. So we'll bring some additional information the next time. We're certainly not asking you to look at it or approve it this evening. But again, that hourly piece is something that it's a thing that we want to bring forward to you with what we think the maximum exposure would be.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Good
Any
questions.
other questions, comments, or further information board members would have prior to the next meeting?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because you're asking to add an assistant coach for dance with an increase of 6 students and an assistant coach for Nordic ski with an increase of 22 students. So I'm just wondering how you determine what the right ratio is in each activity of students per coach.
Well, there isn't necessarily a specified ratio that we have, but one difference between those two pieces that I just want to point out is that the dance is a position that we've actually had for some time, but it was being funded through the student activity account. So it's not necessarily an additional coach, it's just formalizing that the district would pay for that. So I think that that's an important piece. I think the other part with it would be pieces around what's the nature of the activity and how spread out our students. So you have dance students generally all in one place versus Nordic skiing where you could have them on numerous places on the course. Val, you look like you're trying to chime in here.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is the one was an existing position and the Nordic ski has not had an additional position. Because they don't have the same formal, they're not as active in their student activity fundraising as some of the other groups.
Is that helpful?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Okay, good questions. Okay, so we'll have that come back at our Tuesday, November 13th board meeting. So the second item for information, bond referendum update. Dr. Hillman.
Yes, I just want to share a couple of items on our bond referendum, and I just want to go back, and as we always start any bond referendum, we want to make sure that we talk about the why, which is really important. So again, as we know, that we really want the community to know that after last November's bond referendum, we really went back out and listened again, and listened very intently. The board members at this table, administrators, scores of conversations with people individually. We had a 30-member facilities action team that came together and really had some really rich discussion over 3 sessions. We used a thought exchange process that brought in nearly 400 more people's opinion, and we really heard 3 clear themes. We heard the fact that folks wanted us to focus on early childhood programs and elementary school space issues. They wanted us to make sure that we looked at improving our school security while making sure we maintained the welcoming learning environment that Northfielders have come to expect for their students. And they really wanted us to reduce the property tax increase to taxpayers. And really, the bond proposal before voters on November 6th really addresses all 3 of those key things that we heard, and really just emphasizing that we really took to heart what we heard from the community prior to formulating what our proposal was. Just again to review what we're looking at, it's a new 2-story 600-student elementary school on the Greenvale Park campus. You all know it's repurposing the current Greenvale Park building into a district-wide early childhood center, combining all 4 of our programs under one roof. You know our space constraints there. Modest additions and renovations at Sibley and Bridgewater, again, to relieve space issues there. Would result in improved security and additional classroom space. And of course, we'd move the district offices to the first floor and lower level at Longfellow. You know, again, that building built in 1948 for $298,000. I think the community has gotten its money's worth. But we are saying we see several decades more use of Longfellow by moving district offices there. So again, I think that shows our stewardship and our willingness to make sure we maximize the investment that we've had in every facility. So I think those are just a couple of the key things I really want to just focus on in terms of coming back to what's the why and the what, because we want to make sure people are really clear. We still have heard a few people who think that the high school is part of this ballot. We just want to be super clear that the high school is not on this ballot. Otherwise, the expense would be quite a bit more. So a $40.975 million bond referendum that does not include the high school. I want to be really clear about that. So just want to review for board members what we've been doing with our informational campaign. As many of you know, we will not reach the 51 presentations that we did last year. However, I feel like we're leaving it all on the field, you know, in terms of an informational campaign. So just, you know, since the last time that we met, we had a Saturday tour and presentation that we maybe had a dozen people there. And again, trying to offer a number of different opportunities for people to come and hear the message. Of course, we have one more of those official public presentations and tours that's coming up on October 29th, beginning at 7 p.m. with a short presentation, then we break for a tour, and then we come back to finalize the presentation and the Q&A.
So if people are going to Imminent for the other campaign, they should come to Greenvale at 7, right?
They should come there first, yes. We don't want to mix those two together. Very good point, Dr. Iverson. I appreciate that. I had not thought about it because I think there's another presentation that evening too. Yes. And you know, again, I think that's just something else that's really important to be clear, because with folks in the community, there are 2 different questions, bond referendum questions, essentially on the ballot. And both are important things for the community to consider, but we do need to make sure that people understand that they are different. And so what we're talking about are the school proposals, the items that I described before, and of course the city bond referendum and sales tax increase are important questions for the community to consider. And I think that they've been doing a good job trying to share the information as well. But we just have to be really clear that they're not the same question, they are separate questions. And another piece just for really to emphasize is that in many of our precincts, voters are going to have to turn the ballot over, because it's going to be a 2-sided ballot. The voters are going to have to turn the ballot over, you know, to vote on the school district bond question. We've been pushing that out over our social media and some other formats in which we are talking with people. We're trying to pre-teach that skill because we're teachers and that's what we do. But of course, election judges will also give that information. But we just want to be really clear too that those questions aren't linked. I think there's been some folks who are maybe just starting to pay attention who may think the questions are linked. They're not. They're 2 separate questions. Again, both important things for the community to consider, but we just want them to make sure they know that the school question is separate from that. We also have, we've done several other, Noel and I got to spend quite a bit of time together last Tuesday, where in the morning we presented over at 50 North, and had an opportunity for Q&A with folks there in the afternoon, and a presentation that was organized through the League of Women Voters at Village on the Cannon. Again, so we had, and then that one we had actually both residents from Village on the Cannon and some of our high school students who actually came to fulfill the same obligation that some students came here tonight for. So we've been out doing that. That's representative. The week before we were even heavier with presentations, and so we're averaging, I would say we're averaging 3 presentations or more a week over the past several weeks, with just 2 last week with the shorter week. As you might have seen in last Wednesday's Northfield News, Board Chair Julie Pritchard had an article in the opinion section, really just, again, informing voters about what the bond means for kids and what it means for taxpayers, and talking about being transparent about voting, where they can vote, early voting, all of those kinds of things. So great article, Julie, in the paper. We really want to, again, we want no one to say, I didn't know about this. So we're trying to look at every single way we can communicate. I posted something on my superintendent's blog yesterday, again, focusing on, I'm going to do a series over the next couple of weeks, and just focusing on the general part of the election. We've had tables at recent parent-teacher conferences, again, just making sure people have an opportunity for information. At the Greenvale Park Community School, we had tables. Dr. Iverson had staffed that a number of times, just making sure people have the opportunity to get information. Principal Sam Richardson shared information through that. We have been really trying to make sure that no one can say, I didn't know about this. And so if there are other places that people think we need to share the message, make sure you get it to us, and we will go anywhere at any time, to share the news. And so we keep using KYMN and other sources to make sure that people are informed. Northfield News has done a really nice article a couple of weeks ago with a lot of information. I understand there's another one coming up this week. So again, just trying to get the information out, make sure people have the information that they need to make an informed decision. So we even have been putting stickers on popcorn boxes so that when people buy popcorn at the football games, they have a logo and they see that there's an opportunity to go to another website for more information. So again, just really trying to make sure, as we say, no stone left unturned. So that's the bond referendum update. I'd be happy to answer any questions that people have about the informational campaign.
Excellent. Noel?
I have a comment. I was at the 50 North Senior Center as part of the presentation for the new Greenvale bond referendum. And one of the attendees said, I really support education, and I really vote for the ones that support the education, but he said our school taxes go up, but they never go down. And Dr. Hillman was one step away, and I said, Dr. Hillman, can you respond to this comment so would you share again, and you and Val can probably reiterate the amount of savings that we have been able to accomplish by refinancing the bonds?
Well, as we said just a little bit earlier, we're almost to $5.8 million over 10 years. And so Val's right, when you put that out over the entire tax base, and we would never try to say that, you're going to be going to Hawaii, on that tax savings. You might be able to buy some Mountain Dew, but the point is that it's about that continued effort of stewardship. And so I would completely agree that we try to take every advantage to reduce the debt service component of our property taxes. And so we really enjoy conversations like that because of the fact that we want people to know that we are not only awake at the switch, but we are vigilant and looking for any opportunity that we have to save folks property tax dollars when it comes to our debt service piece. With our other property tax components, there are things that are out of our control. In fact, as you know, our levy, a substantial portion of our levy is dependent upon the number of students that we have. And so that is something that we cannot control. We'll be happy to say people want to be here and so they're coming here. That's something we're always very proud of. There are things that we can't control, but we can control being vigilant about looking for the opportunity to refinance bonds as we did just here tonight, which is great.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for the update and thank you for the work that you're doing. And Anita, thank you for the support that you're providing too with making sure that we are getting the information to our community, and most of all that everyone votes on November 6th. So, okay, thank you. Digital replacement days for weather-related cancellations. Dr. Hillman.
Yeah, so what I
Digital
really...
days, exciting.
Yeah, I just want to give people a brief update here. So as you know, last year we had 4 weather-related cancellations. that resulted in 2 makeup days. And we got a substantial amount of feedback from the community about that, in terms of people know that we have the technology in place to follow through on. There are many districts use different terms for it. They use the WILD term in Zimbrota Mazeppa, weather-induced learning days or something like that. There's a lot of creative ways that people market this, but really what we're looking at is saying, we do have a substantial amount of technology in students' hands. Even on days where we cancel because of weather right now, there's a lot of organic work being done to keep learning moving forward regardless of the cancellation. And what we're looking at doing is piloting this approach this year. We're going to send something to families later this week. Every year around this time, I send a message to families reminding them of the tools and the approach that we use to making decisions about whether to come to school or not in the mornings when there's substantial winter-related weather. And it's never one thing. It's usually a combination of things. Are the roads passable? What's the visibility like? The cold? And it's never one of those things. It's usually a combination. But what we'd like to do is we'd like to pilot this. And so what we do have built into the calendar is we have 2 days that are built into the calendar that we don't make up. So that's we're proposing we're going to have that stay the same this year. So the first 2 days, no harm, no foul. It's the same as it always has been. But if we were to get to a third or subsequent days, we are looking at piloting and trying this approach where required activities are pushed out to students via a variety of our tools, such as Schoology. We have a new tool this year for kids in grades K through 3 that we've got some great data on about how many contacts we're making with parents. It's called Seesaw. It's very popular among younger families, and we actually have the paid version now for K3. So really what the concept would be is we have not finalized these parameters yet, but we will be in the next month, where by a certain time of the morning, teaching staff would post the required activities on the particular learning management platform, either Seesaw or Schoology. And then what would happen is they would be available to answer questions or to engage with students or families via email or through the messaging systems that Schoology and or Seesaw provide. They both provide an internal messaging system through the remainder of the school day. And then basically, while we know we have very few students who don't have access to the internet, we also know we do have some. We also know even if you do have access to the internet, there are some students that have responsibilities on those snow days, for example, for a younger sibling or whatever. And what other schools who have done this successfully do is they just basically leave a pretty large window after the canceled day to be able to submit any kind of required activity. So a lot of places it's a full 3 days, or sometimes it's 2 or 3 days in terms of how long it takes for that students have a window to be able to submit those activities. We want to pilot it because we'd like to see how it works. We'd like to see, does it provide the opportunity for us in this district to be able to continue to move learning forward even when we have a snow day. Again, in the pilot, what we're looking at is the first 2 days, as we've done before. It would only be if we heard that third day or further where we would try this approach. We've had a committee of staff who have been helping us look at this. Our administration, we feel it's time to try it. There are quite a few districts who are using this approach, quite a few districts who haven't adopted it yet. We do have the technology in students' hands. We do have the ability to track and look at, is this something that we're able to do? And then really helping people focus on what's the right amount. My biggest fear of this actually is making sure that we keep the amount of work that students are going to do commensurate with a regular school day. Because if you're not careful, you could have students with 9 hours of work as opposed to, the amount of, so we're really looking at how can we make sure that we are accurate or we are reasonable with the amount of time that we think an activity will take. We're working on those kinds of pieces, and again, because the first 2 days are not part of this, we have some time to finalize that approach, but we just don't think that we can wait any longer. We think that we need to try it, and we will, of course, because it's a pilot year, get feedback from staff, from students and families. Again, when you talk to a number of students at our high school, this is happening organically as it is, and so we just think it's something we should look out further. One of the things that we heard from some families at the end of last year when we had to schedule that makeup day is that despite our best effort to be really transparent, about the possibility of a makeup day, we all know that when families look at that and they finalize some summer plans, you're looking at it, well, we're going to go this week, and we'll have to look at maybe a makeup day, it may not be, and there are some families who struggle with that because that last day of school is so important to kids, right? And so it's a real opportunity for closure at the end of the year. And so we did have a number of people who just had some concerns about saying, hey, we've we've scheduled these and we know we have the ability to do this without, doing a makeup day. And so we think it's time to try it. Again, I'm just giving you the heads up because I want you to hear it before we send it out to families later this week. Again, a trial, we'll collect data and then we'll determine if it's something that we want to do moving forward. There are some districts right around us who have done this very successfully. Farmington schools, they are at a point where they are even scheduling regular days to be done in this fashion. So for example, I think it was Friday of last week, they actually had a district-wide digital day in which their students engaged in the curriculum that day digitally and the teachers did some professional development on campus. So there's an example of a district like that who's a few years ahead of where we are, but you also see districts that haven't even really looked at this yet. So we know Zumbrota Mazeppa, Kenyon Wanamingo are an example of just a couple of other districts around us that are utilizing this approach. And so it's time to take a look at it.
Well, and depending on Mother Nature, the pilot may or may not occur this year.
That's very true, but even if we work to be prepared and don't need it, we will have done that work where we can have some, and just one piece I want to come back to be very clear is that, in consultation with Board Chair Pritchard, we determined that the day that we canceled because of the tornado is not going to be counted toward the total number of cancellations for the year. We felt that that's such an out of the ordinary experience that we just felt we needed to have that as a standalone day. So just to be really clear that doesn't count as one of the two. And that was a really important piece to give us the time and the ability to take a look at this. So be happy to answer any other questions that people might have to begin with.
Board members have. I think it's exciting. I think it's great that we're kind of like Flex Hour, we just sort of said, no, this is the right thing to do. Let's try it. And it's a pilot and we'll get lots of surveys and a lot of information back. And it's just good to understand it. I think when you listen to the different school reportings, you see so many districts saying, it will be a digital day. So I think it's definitely out there and we need to be fast followers on it.
And again, families will get this information later this week when I send out an email with the normal video about how we cancel for weather and those kinds of things. So,
any questions or comments? Excellent. Well, thank you. Okay, good. So other items for information, just a reminder, the Retired Educators Luncheon, one we look forward to every year, is already this Wednesday, October 24th at Ruth's on Stafford. So I'm sure board members got the postcard and the RSVP, but just a reminder that is already coming up this Wednesday. National Merit Reception.
Yep, so that will be held on November 13th, and we'll handle it like we did last year. If you remember, in years past, we'd be in the upper calf, but we will meet here in this area here, and I believe, Anita, it is at 6 o'clock? Okay, so 6 o'clock here on November 13th, and we'll have the annual reception for those National Merit Qualifiers.
Have they been announced yet?
They have, but I don't have them with me.
Okay. Okay, so one item for information that was added, and very exciting to share, the S&P Global rating for the district. Val?
Yes, so we are excited to share that we were rated as AA+ again for our bond, which Jeff talked about a little bit. But it's a pretty, we were on the phone with S&P for probably a little over an hour, and it's a very involved agenda. They go through lots of different aspects of our, what's the bond and what are we doing with it, what is our enrollment, what is our historical financial, what procedures do I have in place. So it's a pretty in-depth analysis.
Local economy, things like that.
Yep, the local economy. And so they basically said AA+ is the second highest rating we could receive. There are only 3 districts in the state that have a higher rating, and we've been told because of our economic base here that we would not be eligible for the AAA. So very happy to maintain that. Their criteria that was positive for us was our relative proximity to the Twin Cities. Very strong budgetary flexibility with historically high reserve levels, financial management practices and policies that we consider good. I'm working to find out what great would be. And low to moderate overall net debt with rapid amortization. Basically, our debt will be paid off in the next 5 years. So we did obviously talk about the potential of an upcoming bond, but that did not adversely impact the ratings. So very happy to share that news.
Well, and well-deserved, thank you. I mean, for the work that you do and the financial stewardship and the commitment the board has had to that as well. So really, really good news. Excellent. Dr. Hillman, any comments?
You just can't get, I mean, I want the AAA, but that's okay. I mean, AA plus is really as good as it gets for a district like us. And so again, this is Standard and Poor's. I mean, that's it. So it's not like this is the real deal. This is the major leagues, and Standard and Poor's giving us this rating, really demonstrates the commitment that the board has had to good financial stewardship for, a long time, going back to Dr. Richardson's days and Tom Stringer's days of really putting a lot of these things into place. Val and I have just taken those handoffs, and we've just continued with improving those processes and procedures. And as we all know, Val is as good as it gets at her job, and we are able to make some of these really positive moves and get this great. Again, what I like about this is it's an independent group that is giving us that rating, and so I think that's something that the community really should hear, that one of the major league folks, Standard & Poor's, rates us nearly as high as we really could get as a school district. And so you heard Jeff Seeley say we had 8 organizations competing for our bond sales, willing to pay more than what we were asking for, because of our bond rating. And so that, again, is good for the community. It's good for kids, because that when we have that financial strength, we're able to get a lower interest rate. There's all sorts of things that come back to be very positive for the district. So we could not be more thrilled to have that rating affirmed.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yes, it's the size of the community that doesn't allow that highest rating. And then what are the other 3? Is it Edina, Wayzata, Minnetonka?
Yep. Well, it would be really interesting to know what increase we would have to have in our industrial commercial base. What would that tax, base have to increase to, and whether or not that's something that the city could eventually, achieve. No.
Might they consider the stability of the school board as one of the criteria?
I'm not sure that wasn't the question that they asked, but I do think that does lead to the good financial practice, right? Because the questions to ask. We know that when we come to you, even an example this evening, when we are bringing you just a simple, small piece of the budget, like you are asking the right questions about things included in proposals for. We're talking about a very small piece of a budget of $50 million. You are asking the right questions, and Val and I know that we're going to make sure we're going to do the best that we can do to anticipate your questions. We're going to be transparent. We're going to share with you the successes in the areas where we have to improve. So I do think that there is a piece to having some stability in the board, because you have experience, what questions to ask.
Excellent. Well, great meeting, everyone. So we will move on to future meetings. Please note that we're already talking about November meetings, and note that Tuesday, our next board meeting is actually on Tuesday, November 13th, that Monday, November 12th being the Veterans Holiday. And as just announced, we will have the National Merit Reception prior to that at 6 o'clock, so the board meeting will start at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, November 13th. Following that meeting, Monday, November 26th, and Monday, December 10th, which those meetings are at 7 p.m. in the High School Media Center. So with that, I ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Noel. Is there a second? Second by Margaret. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Did we still